Welcome to the Bucket Plan on Demand, a podcast for financial advisors based on the best-selling book and process that simplifies financial planning. Hear from skilled industry professionals and special guests each episode that will help perfect your approach with clients and your results.
Welcome to Coffee Break. I'm Kirsten Schlumbohm, Vice President and Head of Annuity Sales here at C2P. Here's a fun fact. 4 years ago, when I was interviewing companies for a position, one of the reasons I chose C2P was because of Jeannette Bajalia. Our paths had crossed in a path of life, and when I saw that she was connected with C2P, I was like, this is an organization I want to be a part of. So I'm very excited to have Jeannette as one of our guest baristas today. She is a senior wealth manager at JL Smith, and with nearly 2 decades of experience specializing in elder care, life transition planning, particularly for women, and women navigating spousal changes. A former corporate executive, she launched her second career in financial advising to better serve women's unique financial needs. She's the founder of Women's Worth, a national initiative supporting women's financial goals, and a recognized speaker, author, and an EdSlot Master Elite Advisor. Welcome, Jeannette. I'm so glad you're here.
It's great to be with you, Kirsten. This is a passion of mine to do this longevity planning, so thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. I always learn something from you. And though Jeannette doesn't remember meeting me on a cruise with another IMO, I remember that day. You impacted my life personally. And since you impact a lot of lives, I'm going to start off with our first question. You spent your career helping women navigate financial transitions. Why is longevity planning such a cornerstone of your holistic approach?
When you start following the research, Kirsten, 80% of women we're seeing are dying single. So they're dying with one, they're navigating latter life stages as a solo. And so when you look at the research and you see the growth in the centenarian population, it is one of the fastest growing segments worldwide, not just in the United States. And so as a personal caregiver for over 3 decades, I've seen the costs associated with the lifestyle from the ages of 85 to beyond 90 and into the hundreds, which we're going to see many women moving into, which is why I try to focus on them. So we need to plan for the future today. And we don't want the future to get here. And I'm 90 years old and I don't have a strategy for how I'm going to navigate the next decade. So from my perspective, it's quite short-sighted to think our clients aren't going to potentially age in place. And that is a completely different financial planning model. So if we call ourselves holistic advisors, we got to deal with the latter life stages. It's not just about investments. It's not, rates of return. It's not sequence of returns risk. It's how are we going to help our aging population navigate those latter life stages and maintain their dignity and their financial assets.
It's so important as a person whose parents thought they were going to pass away at age 64 and 67 because that was the age their parents passed away, now kissing 81 and 87. We are trying to put a plan together after the fact. So it's so very important to plan for longevity planning. You often talked about lifestyle protection planning, like protecting the lifestyle that you want to have. How does this also fit in with a broader scope of longevity planning, especially when clients may have 30 plus years in retirement?
That's a great question, Kirsten. And when you think about bucket planning and financial planning, we kind of do a financial plan, but we have to look at lifestyle in the context of how we're going to create different lifestyles as we ages. And so we need to ensure there's adequate lifestyles based on whether you decided you're going to age in place, whether you have a long-term care protection, whether you're going to age. I'm doing a plan for a woman right now who is got a residence in Massachusetts and a residence in Central Florida. And so we had to do 2 different plans. If you want to age in Massachusetts with the 7% state income tax on top of federal versus aging in Florida. So we had to look at and she has, one of her goals was making sure her son is set for retirement because he's got special needs. He's disabled. And so when you think of those types of lifestyle changes, that for me, it's protecting the lifestyle, financial planning, bucket planning, all the great processes we have are a means to achieve the end. And the end is protecting the lifestyle when you don't know what potentially that lifestyle could be.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to think 30 years in advance. Like we were talking before this start is I'm approaching 50. I could live to 100. My parents are going to be well in their 80s. Can you break down the strategy you would propose to a client that both supports longevity and aging in place to give them a peace of mind? Like, what if we were having a conversation, let's say I was a client, how would we approach that?
Okay, I would say I would start focusing on how you want to age and funding your long-term care. And then we engage in stories about, do they know anybody that has had to navigate assisted living, memory care, or longer care, and engage in whether they want traditional long-term care protection or not. So what I do is I create a fourth bucket. When they don't want traditional long-term care protection, it is a holistic advisor's responsibility to say, how are you going to fund your life when you're 85 years old? What are you going to do? So once I engage them in creating, I call it the scenario. I call it the latter life stage scenario. Paint for me how you want to live when you can't drive anymore. Paint for me a picture of what that's going to look like, because I've got to build those costs into their financial plan. And so I create a fourth bucket that's allocated towards latter life planning, healthcare planning, alternative and preventive care, and all the support services. So it's a bucket that allows us, I call it my fourth bucket. It's embedded in the third bucket because I couldn't convince anybody to give me a fourth bucket for healthcare planning. And for the unknown, it's planning for the unknown lifestyles. And so basically that is what I do is once they paint the scenario of what am I going to do when I'm 90 years old? And I say, what are you going to do when you're 95 and you're still alive? I force the dialogue around that. So I can't create a holistic wealth management plan without having those facts defined.
And I'm sure in your process, you're building really great rapport because people don't want to think about that. They don't want to talk about that.
Kirsten, it's a differentiator for us as advisors because our competitors are only talking money. They're not talking about money as a means to achieve your desired lifestyle. They just want the money. And for us, I coined it's more than the money. It's about total well-being as the mantra for Woman's Worth. And so that's really what this is all about.
I really love the fourth bucket because where I went was that bucket will be the bucket where I can buy my shoes at 85 when I'm in the nursing home. And I think I'm running a marathon down the hall and I'm just shuffling my feet, but enjoying it because I think I'm staying active. What are common gaps that you're seeing when you're doing these holistic plans when it comes to healthcare, long-term care, and other age-related costs?
I think, Chris, the first is the dialogue is just not occurring with the realities of aging. People don't want to talk about it, just like people don't want to talk about estate planning because they don't want to talk about dying. You're going to get old. So it's incumbent on us as advisors to open up the dialogue. And I would say one of the gaps is that we don't have an emotional muscle embedded in the discussion. For us financial advisors, we're mostly fact-based. We're left brain, but all these discussions come from the right brain. It's the emotional muscle in helping share stories about how they want to age and how they want to age in place. I think another gap is we talk about strategic partnerships with attorneys, with CPAs, with centers of influence. We talk about that extensively. But what about building relationship with partners who have services that help seniors navigate their latter life stages? They're like real estate companies, but focus on senior housing, helping someone move into memory care, finding assisted living and pricing it out. Partnering with them where you become the financial experts to analyze all these various lifestyle. That's a huge gap is we don't think that these strategic relationships are critical. And I just got appointed to an advisory board for the senior council in our local community.
I love that, Jeannette, because you're an advocate for your clients. Coming from a place where a few years ago, my mom, we didn't know that she was having deterioration of her memory or dementia until she wound up in Minnesota. She thought she was driving 30 minutes to my brother's and she ended up 3 hours north. And we were at a loss as a family as what to do. Having someone like you in my squad or in my advocate group would be so helpful. That's powerful, Jeannette. And kudos to you for joining and being on that board, because I can't imagine you not making a difference. For clients that come in later in life that haven't made solid plans, how do you prioritize their needs?
Some of the older clients, it's presenting projections with increased lifestyle costs to stress test it. Because when you do a financial plan, okay, here are their core lifestyle expenses. You can do your projections, you can do cash flow analysis, you could do all that. But basically, when they come in later in life, it's about how do we manage the risks associated with longevity? How do we manage those risks? Because most people really think Medicare pays a part of their long-term care. So it's re-educating them and bringing down to their view risk management in this lifestyle space and the healthcare space. And a traditional bucket plan will not work for the older clients. They need a more simple, more linear approach that says it's all about funding the next decade. And if you do want to still leave money behind, because women, mostly women, don't want to be a burden on their kids, and they do want to leave something behind for their kids. So that takes a different type of planning to do creative solutions gathering. So you're not just saying, oh, well, we're going to manage your portfolio in a conservative portfolio because you're using your money now, and we know you're going to move into an assisted living community that's going to cost you an extra $3,000 a month. So it's a different type of planning.
So if somebody were to come into your office that didn't have a plan, they're later in life, they're nervous about this, what kind of objections do you have to overcome, Jeannette? Just out of curiosity? Or is it more of the conversation leads them to the answers? And as Nikki posted, it's not just about the money, it's about the total well-being. So how do you help them get there if they're scared because they're older?
You know, what's interesting, when you open the dialogue, you move them from fear to relief. Finally, my other advisors aren't talking about this. I didn't think about that. I didn't think what's going to happen if I had to spend all my money on my husband's care and there's nothing left for me. It's given them permission to engage in that dialogue between each other about the realities. One of us could end up debilitated. What are we going to do? How much our assets are we going to use to help him if we don't have traditional care? It is called longevity planning for a reason. It's about more elder care issues involved in it. And I see it with many financial advisors. We are not addressing the realities of getting old because we don't want to talk about it. We're getting old. We need to talk about it. We need to redefine our financial planning processes and add another arm to financial planning and engage them in the dialogue, because you'll win more clients, get more referrals if, in fact, you engage in the discussions our competitors are not engaging in.
I love it. I've spoken with other advisors, not with C2P. I've been in the industry almost 20 years, and they're afraid to have that conversation because they think it's a hard conversation, uncomfortable, and they just don't want to talk. Like you said, nobody wants to talk about passing away too soon, or what if I can't take care of myself and my kids are far away. It's a difficult conversation. So I appreciate you bringing this to the table. And not only do you set the table for your clients, you're engaging them in a way that they are like, wow, she's treating us differently than any other advisor. She knows something. You build instant credibility. So that's wonderful. I love that. Can you share an example of how you've used your fourth bucket to help a client navigate major life transitions while keeping their longevity plan in place?
Again, a fourth bucket, as it relates to a fourth bucket, I look at it as a specific set of assets or financial tools we put in there that I know I'm not going to touch for the next 15 to 20 years. So if their later bucket, volatility tolerance is a moderate, and we've managed X percentage of assets, but if I know my analysis shows I could potentially need $350,000 for 4 years in a long-term care facility in Florida, I will take today's value of that money and I will say that we're going to invest this more aggressively. Are you comfortable with putting this money under the mattress and just thinking you don't have it to protect it and to fund it for long-term care. It could be a number of things. It could be strictly an annuity that is an accumulation annuity that I am not going to touch for 15 to 20 years so I can grow assets for the latter life stages. It could be an annuity that has a long-term care doubler. So it is that fourth bucket that has unique tools and strategies that the client knows, I don't care what's happening in this bucket. This is our later bucket. This is for your health care protection planning. This is for your longevity. And you know what? If you die suddenly, guess what? We've grown this for your family. We've grown this asset base to increase the value of your estate. So that's really how I like them to think about it. And then granted, it's in the growth bucket, but it's allocated differently. And it has different tools.
Have you had clients? I'm sure you've had clients who've all of a sudden had a situation arise and you've had to help them. They haven't had that plan in place. I mean, you have people that go through things every single day. I mean, have you had to ignite that fourth bucket or help somebody navigate if they didn't take your advice and get that fourth bucket? How are you doing that?
Yeah, it's come to terms with the fact that, okay, we are where we are. The past doesn't matter. So another deeper level of dialogue, like, here's what it looks like. Here's what we can do. And at that point, if they're not, they could potentially be too old to even find the right financial tools. So you just love them through it and you just implement whatever you can to help them navigate through that. And most of this is happening when people are coming to the reality of what memory care costs, what assisted living costs, what skilled nursing costs. And, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And sometimes the teacher appears too late in life. And we have to be creative enough. That's where the community resources are valuable. I can navigate them and put them in a community resource or get someone to help them navigate what is a more cost-effective lifestyle.
I love that you said you love them through it. I think one thing about you, Jeannette, that is highly unique and powerful is that when we were getting ready for this, you talked about how you bring everything back to your faith and you love because you have that faith. And I think that's powerful. And that's why your clients stay with you, is that they know that you're an advocate and you're an ally and you're going to help them through every stage of their retirement. Now, when we were talking about that, we were talking about the volatility of the market. How are you helping or reminding clients that your longevity planning will, how is this affecting longevity planning, this market? What are you doing to help calm the storm for your clients, especially when they're worried about their longevity and lifestyle planning?
Yeah, my personal philosophy is like, I was talking to a client yesterday that says, look, we've saved all this money. We don't want to lose it. They relocated to Tennessee, and I was on the phone with them at 7:00 last night. And I reminded them because, see, 2023 and 2024 were growth years. I took growth off. Like this particular couple, they grew their portfolio by $150,000 in 2024. We took that $150,000 and moved it to a wealth accumulation annuity. And I reminded them, I said, remember the conversation we had? Are you willing to let the market take your growth away from you with volatility, which is around the corner? We don't know when, but we can anticipate. So we took $150,000 of risk off the table, put it in a accumulation annuity to grow without risk. And they were so relieved. It was like I gave them another $1 million out of their market performance because, oh yeah. And I said, and you know what? The next 100,000 growth, because I'm not going to get greedy and think the market's not going to take your growth. So we advisors often don't get in the habit of, you grew the portfolio, stop feeling lucky all the time on behalf of your clients. Let's redirect that money. We've got some great wealth accumulation annuities. They may not need income annuities, but let's put them in those tools. And that way, when we have this time period, this volatility, it's another opportunity to open them up to doing it again next year or the next time we see market growth.
I love that. You're reminding them of the plan you put in place, calming their fears, reminding them that fear and faith have the same amount of energy. Which one are they going to choose? And you bring them back to the plan. That's amazing. I love that. You discussed a little about the different generations you're helping. As we look at the next generation of retirees, what trends or what changes do you think advisors need to be aware of when it comes to longevity and retirement planning?
Well, the next generation after the baby boomers, they are so ill, they are not ready. The extent to which we can go to market with educating them. Also, this generation are inheriting the baby boomers' assets, and it's an ideal opportunity for us to engage them and look, let's not repeat what your parents did. You've got this inheritance. Like we just had a client, a couple who all their assets were IRAs, and it didn't make sense for them to fund for long-term, but they were concerned about long-term care because both of their parents, they had been writing checks out of their parents' accounts to fund long-term care. And so they inherited money. So it was non-qualified assets. And I presented to them for 3 years. We've been talking about y'all need some form of long-term care protection. We were able to get them an asset back, the Lincoln Money Guard, $100,000 for each of them, and get them some long-term care protection. So that's the next generation. When they're inheriting assets, it's a perfect opportunity to open them up to more holistic planning. And at that age, they can qualify for better longevity planning tools, basically.
So it's having that conversation. Again, it goes back to having the conversation. We have a question from Kathy in California. I just feel like I was on a talk show. I'm sorry. Kathy asked this question, Jeannette. Do you find clients willing to engage in the conversation, or do they give you a throwaway line like, my kids will take care of me, or Dr. Jack will take care of me? Like, how do you help them get on board? Or is there just a point in time where you're like, I understand this wall is solid, we're not going to break through it?
No, it's not, because you get a lot of that. Well, my son or my daughter will take care of you. And I said, okay, let's play this out. You're 85 years old. You can't toilet yourself. How comfortable are you going to be with your son or your daughter changing your diaper? And they just stop. Or I face the reality of, do you really want your son or your daughter to stop their lives with their families to take care of you? No man or woman want that. They just don't want it. And that's where they're open to the dialogue. I don't have a lot of resistance because they see I have a lot of emotion and passion put into my dialogue, my planning. And I make the guys read the Wise Up Women book and I make the women read it and say, look, these are the realities that y'all have to think about. And so we tend to focus on the objections as if they're real, but when you paint the stories are worth, I mean, you could talk till the cows come home, but if you tell them one little story of here's what could potentially happen, how comfortable, how will that work for you? They are very open in the dialogue, and they're so appreciative that you're talking about it.
And your book is fantastic. And I'm glad you have both male and female clients write it. You can purchase it on Amazon, Wise Up Woman by Jeannette Bajalia. It is a fantastic book. As we're winding down, I got a couple more questions for you. You've discussing finances with a client is more than just money. I just love that. Factors such as purpose, lifestyle goals, and emotional well-being should be considered. How do you incorporate these into non-financial elements into a long-term financial strategy for a client?
It's in when you work with them on their expenses. I discuss the need. I said, well, how much do you spend on self-care? How much do you spend on alternative and complementary care? Because as we get older, there's a lot of real non-Medicare pay and services that keep us healthy. So I basically turn it around and discuss how finance-induced stress is creating havoc, specifically with women. Because as we get older and we see market volatility and we see us spending more of our money and trying to keep up with inflation and all the realities of the traditional financial world, I shift the focus to healthcare costs and expenses in keeping the mind, the body, and the spirit alive. Because the mind, the body, and the spirit, if it's not in balance, you're going to spend more money in the healthcare system. We have clients that call me. They said they were just given a heart medication. They were told they needed it, and it's $30,000 a month. So we start working with them on, okay, we'll go to the manufacturer. We'll go file a grant. There's grants that you get. So we help them in these areas, but it's important for us to recognize that at some point, we as advisors become their confidants on how to help give them the tools to go back and deal with. And building in self-care costs is very critical. Very critical. Alternative and complementary care. If we're not building that into the expenses when they get to be 75 and above, we're really shortchanging our clients. We're not addressing all the right things because more of their lifestyle is going, and you don't shift it from travel to healthcare costs. They're not the same because people are going to be traveling while they're incurring more healthcare costs.
I just love the fact that you're an advocate. You're not just an advisor, you're just not holistic planning. You're an advocate for your clients. Helping them understand where they could possibly get cost savings with medicine is so important. You always amaze me, Jeannette. One more question as we're wrapping up. For advisors that want to evolve their practice and to be more holistic with longevity planning and be more focused with longevity planning, where do you suggest they start? Is it a mindset shift, a process planning, or planning process, or is it a mix of both? Where do we start?
Well, I look at it very simply. It is a mindset. We do our work from the neck up. It's all head work. We do our work and our skill, our expertise is from the neck up. Even we as women in the financial world, we're trained by predominantly male financial industry and all the training we put in front, and they think differently and they process information differently. So I say that's from the neck up. I say where advisors start is from the neck down. That's the heart. That's the soul of our profession. It's the heart and soul. We need to stop enamoring them with all these fancy tools and spreadsheets and all that. But it's the realities of the emotional elements of navigating latter life stages. That's what's so critical. And we have to familiarize ourselves with the context of the world they're operating at that stage. When they come to you and they say, I'm thinking about moving into a continuing care retirement community, well, you better know the different pricing models. You better know the different types of contracts. You better know how to build different scenarios. So, well, if you buy in at this level, here's the impact to your holistic plan. It's not one or the other. It's understanding how to build financial plans for those changes that they're anticipating. And then doing the different scenarios like I did with this client. I'm going to build you a financial plan as if you lived in Massachusetts, and then I'm going to build you one as if you lived in Florida. And you can compare them and you can use facts and data to help you make the lifestyle choice. And then look at different protection planning strategies. Very critical. Familiarize yourself with different things. Do you want to move into asset protection strategies, working with an elder care attorney? Because you know that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's and it's going to be a very debilitating process. So let's get ahead of that game and see what we have to do to protect some assets.
You know what, Jeannette, you're always an inspiration. And I think everybody can see why you're so successful. You lead with heart. Your brain is made for this. Thank you for being a part of today's coffee break and inspiring me. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure to everyone listening. I hope everyone took something away from this. And again, thank you all for being here. And if you do one thing today, lead with heart and help your clients. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bucket Plan on Demand, brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Subscribe today for the latest episodes and insights. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help support and enhance your advisory business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.